Hello, and welcome to our new case discussion. So, our case today is a 30-year-old lady presented to ED with palpitations following taking a tricyclic antidepressant overdose. So, all her vital signs were okay, were within normal on arrival, except her heart rate that was 173 beats per minute. So, she's had a 12-lead ECG, and this was her ECG. So what I want you to do now is I want you to pause this video, have a proper look at this ECG, see what you think, have a diagnosis and a management plan in your head, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, welcome back. I hope you've done as we agreed. And yeah, let's have a look at this ECG and see what we can come up out of it. Basically, the most important thing that I want to discuss today is to have an approach when analyzing any ECG. So this is a good chance to cover some basic stuff about ECG interpretation. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about a suggested approach for ECG interpretation. There are so many different approaches that you can use, and everyone has got his own way of analyzing ECGs. It's all about just covering everything in a way that you like, as long as you're not going to miss anything important. So the approach that I would suggest today is the approach that I use, and I think it's a really useful one. So feel free to use it if you like it. Obviously, the first thing that you need to do is to make sure that the ECG paper is the right one for the right patient, and you make sure that the calibration is correct and the leads are in the right place. Then you start analyzing the ECG. First question should be, how is the QRS complex? 4 questions about the complex: rate, rhythm, width, and axis. Next, you check the P waves and its relation to the QRS complex. Then you check the intervals, and the 2 important intervals that I'm interested in are the PR interval and the QT interval. Next, you check for chamber enlargement that include atrial enlargement and ventricular enlargements. And then you check for ischemia, looking at the ST segment, T waves, and Q waves. And following this, anything else. So a J wave or whatever. So any other findings comes under others. So this is my suggested approach that I would strongly recommend for any beginner with ECG interpretation to use it and to get trained on it. So let's analyze our ECG following our approach. This is our ECG. So let's check the first 3 questions about the complex. Let's check the rate, the rhythm, and the width of the complex. If we apply this, we will notice that the rate is clearly fast. It's about 170, so we are on the tachy side. We've got tachycardia here. The rhythm, from the regularity point of view, looks very regular. So this is a regular rhythm. And the width, whether it's a narrow or broad, this is a narrow complex. So if we talk about this, answering these 3 questions, we've got here a narrow, complex, regular tachycardia. So let's talk about this, and let's cover the differential diagnosis of this condition. So when it comes to a narrow, complex tachycardia in general, we split them into regular and irregular. The irregular ones are 3 main ones. You've got AF, you've got atrial flutter with variable conduction, and you've got multifocal atrial tachycardia, MAT. The regular ones are also 3. You've got the sinus tachy, you've got the SVT, and you've got the atrial flutter with a fixed conduction. And considering that our patient has had a regular rhythm, then this is the differential that we're interested in. It's either sinus tachy or SVT or atrial flutter with a fixed conduction. Good, let's move on. So to differentiate the 3 conditions, it's all about the P waves. If you can see 1 P wave before each complex, this is sinus tachy. If you can see what looks like more than 1 P wave before each complex, this is atrial flutter. And if you can see no P waves at all, or a distorted inverted P waves just before or just after the complex, this is an SVT. So now the question is, where is the best place to check for P waves? You've got 12 leads over there. When I was in the med school, I remember that I've been told that actually lead 2 is the best lead to check for P waves. And I used it for a long time. Then I grew up and I've had some more experience, and I've learned that actually anywhere in the ECG should be checked for P waves. So not necessarily P waves, it can be anywhere else. Then I started realizing that actually if I'm gonna choose one single lead to check for P waves, the best lead to check is V1. And when I started thinking about it, it made sense in my head. So have a look at this. This is the anatomy of our heart. And if you look at this, actually, you will notice that number 1 is your SA node, and number 2 is your AV node. So this is where they are anatomically in the heart. This is your SA node position in the heart. And if you remember where we put our leads when we do our ECG, actually lead V1 is almost just above the SA node. So it makes perfect sense in my head that this is probably the best lead to check for P waves. So going back to our ECG and checking V1, we will start noticing that actually we've got what looks like regular P waves before each complex in V1. And if you look further, you will find in AVL that actually there are P waves there as well, and in lead 3 there are P waves. So now we've got a narrow complex regular tachycardia with one P wave before each complex. So this is sinus tachycardia. So now we know that we've got a patient with sinus tachy with a rate of 173. So what we've covered so far was we've covered the QRS rate, rhythm, width. We haven't talked about the axis yet, and we've talked about the P wave and its relation to the complexes. Next, we've got the intervals to cover. We've got the chamber enlargements, ischemia, and others. Back to our ECG, and let's talk about the axis. So there are so many different ways of checking the axis. My preferred way is I look at lead 1 and I look at lead AVF. Lead 1 is to my left hand side and lead AVF is to the side of my right hand side. And I look at the complexes there. If the complex in lead 1 is pointing up and the complex in lead AVF is pointing up, this means that both my hands are pointing up. That's a normal axis. If the complex in lead 1 is pointing down and in lead AVF is pointing up, this means that my right hand's up, that's right axis deviation, and vice versa. If my left hand's up and my right hand's down, that's left axis deviation. Looking at this example, both the complexes in both leads are pointing up, but actually we've got a fairly deep S wave in lead 1. So I would say this is rightish axis deviation rather than a banged or right axis deviation. So that's regarding the axis here. We've covered the P waves in terms of the interval. So we've got a normal PR interval here, and not talking about the QT interval. We have got a fairly long QT interval, and that is something that we're gonna cover in future videos with more details. In terms of chamber enlargements, I can't really see clear obvious signs of chamber enlargements here, and again that's something that we're going to cover in the future. And from the ischemia point of view, again no clear signs of significant ST deviation or T wave changes. So in summary, we've got sinus tachycardia, rightish axis deviation, and a long QT interval. So does this match with a TCA overdose? Well, we're going to talk about TCA overdose in the near future, actually with far more details. But let's just cover quickly the ECG changes that happens with TCA overdose in here. You get this. You get sinus tachy because of the antimuscarinic effect of it. You get broad complex, and it should be really broad when it is broad. So it's more than one big square in width, and that's because of the sodium channel toxicity effect of the TCA. You get long QTC, you get right axis deviation and a tall R in AVR. So these are the changes that happens with TCA overdose. So back to our case and let's see what happened. So when this case presented to ED, she presented with this tachycardia and this history. So they checked this ECG, and unfortunately this ECG was misinterpreted as an SVT. And I can clearly see why. I mean, have a look at this part of the ECG. Looking at this part, actually, there are no clear P waves at all that you can confidently see. So it's very easy to look at this and say, oh yeah, that's an SVT. So this patient received 2 doses of adenosine unnecessarily with no effect at all before someone started noticing that actually there are P waves somewhere else in the ECG. Then she was treated by magnesium sulfate infusion per ToxBase advice, and ToxBase is the national website in United Kingdom that's used for any toxicology case. She's also received some supportive treatment with IV fluids, etc. And actually she did really well. So heart rate started going down, she clinically improved, she was admitted just for observations overnight, and she did well at the end, discharged home the day after. So this was the case that I wanted to discuss today, and I think we've got so many learning points here. The points that I want to highlight are, first, you should have a clear approach when interpreting any ECG. This is my suggested approach. Start with the QRS, check rate, rhythm, width and axis, then check the P waves and its relation to the complexes. Check the intervals PR and QT. Check for chamber enlargement, atria and ventricles, and check for ischemia. Check the ST segment, T waves and Q waves, and lastly anything else. So that's my first learning point. Second is the differential diagnosis of narrow complex regular tachycardia. You've got sinus tachy, SVT, and atrial flutter with fixed block. And the best lead to check for P waves is usually lead V1, but again, don't forget to check everywhere in the ECG. And lastly, the ECG changes with TCA overdose. So we know now that it can cause sinus tachy, wide complex, prolonged QT interval, right axis deviation, and tall R in AVR. And this was it regarding this case. So I hope you found this useful and looking forward to talk to you in our next video. Thank you.